Hi, I am Rebekah Olson, CEO of the Maryland Association of CPAs, and this is Beyond the Bottom Line. Over the past few months, so much conversation, right? Really, past few years around AI, and especially AI in accounting. And it's focused on a lot of like when and where we should be implementing, security around it, of course, and the efficiencies that you can gain. But Blue Jay just came out with their 2026 AI Tax Research Solution Outlook Report. And it says that we've reached a new phase, so that the conversation is not about just experimenting anymore to speed up existing work, but about really how we integrate it into our firms to offer and deliver more value. And so I think this phase is really an inflection point for our profession, right? As AI really changes how information is found, it's analyzed, it gives us the power to elevate the importance of judgment, relationships, communications, trusted advice, right? The things that have always been kind of the hallmark of the CPA profession. And so today we are joined by two guests that can really bring this conversation to life. Ankit Dhawan, partnership manager at Blue Jay, who helped lead this great research, which surveyed over 1,000 accounting professionals about how AI is really changing their tax practice. And then joining him with me is Barrett Young, MACPA Secretary-Treasurer, a small firm owner, and a Blue Jay user. So he's going to really talk through what does this look like in practice, right? So welcome, Ankit and Barrett. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Becca.
Yeah. So you might have realized I know Barrett knows this from our board meetings too. We like to start with good news. And it can be good news related to, your professional work or your personal life. But what has been encouraging or really energizing to you this past month? Barrett, we'll start with you. What's some good news for me?
Other than coming on the executive committee of the state association, I've got a team member who is this week taking her fourth section of the CPA exam. She took this whole week off so that she could study for it,
Awesome.
and she's 3 for 3 currently on the other 3 parts. So she's tackling FAR, and
Okay.
I had a discussion with her before she left last weekend, and she said, any tips? And I'm like, it's been so long since I've taken FAR. Don't ask me for that.
Yeah.
But you're going to be a CPA by the end of the year, whether you pass this one or have to retake it. So the end is in sight. And that's my good news because,
That is, I love that.
relevant to this conversation, the
Yeah.
future pipeline is still, AI is not going to solve that. And we
Right.
still need to be encouraging people to become trusted advisors in this
Yeah.
profession. So,
That's awesome. That's so exciting to watch people that you've mentored kind of go through that process and be so close. So we are certainly cheering her on as well. Ankit, how about you? Something personally, professionally, what's energizing you lately?
Yeah, a couple things. I guess one professional, one personal. On the professional side, I had the privilege to meet in person many tax professionals across a number of conferences over the last few weeks. So always an energizing point to kind of hear what's happening on the ground level from firms of all sizes and types. On the personal side of things, I've got a 9-month-old at home, so
Oh wow.
energizing might be doing a little bit of the heavy lifting there, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm starting to figure the world out a little bit. So that's been the best
Yeah.
bit of my week, every week pretty much.
Yeah.
that's
Just
awesome.
watching him grow at that age, man, every day I feel like they're learning something new. That's awesome.
I'll throw a personal in, then also
Yeah.
my oldest graduated from high school this year, so I'm on the other
Yes.
end of that
On the other end of
journey.
that, but wow. Um, Great. And I love that mixing the professional and the personal because even though we're about to talk about AI, right? I think what we're gonna see is that some of these technologies are helping us to actually add more of that personal, that relationship part of our profession. That has always been part of it, but I think we're getting to have more time there, right? So this report. Great report, a lot of great information. One of the things that stood out is that the adoption of AI-powered tax research has nearly doubled in the past year from the last report. And so it's suggesting, we're not just experimenting or trying things out or, having these little teams off to the side trying to test a few things, right? We're really embracing it. Ankit, were you surprised by that adoption rate increase? Where do you see that's really changed just over the last 12 months that shifted that adoption?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think we were surprised at Blue Jay, but we saw two kind of major things happen, and almost a conversion of those two things.
Mm,
The first being that the tools are getting really good. So you have products that have agentic workflows, the ability to do deep reasoning, multimodal capabilities as well. So you have AI that lives across your documents, your spreadsheets, your email inbox, etc. And it's showing up in ways, it's a different animal than what it was last year.
right.
Second is like you mentioned, the data has caught up to what people are feeling as well.
Sure.
33 to 60%, obviously is a huge change. And the group of people who've had no plans to adopt AI have pretty much become negligible. Both McKinsey and Deloitte are showing the same kind of acceleration across the financial services industry broadly. So it's not a tax specific blip. It's
Right.
we're seeing that inflection point, like you mentioned, hit the profession in real time. And once firms are relying on something rather than experimenting it, the pressure is going to expound quickly for other businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting. I think sometimes our profession gets um, falsely labeled as a laggard, especially in adopting new technology. But it seems like we're more maybe leading the way here. We'll see. Barrett, I know GWCPA's has been a leader in this space for years, right? But I'm curious if there was like a moment for you as a firm leader or as a professional, as a CPA, where AI and some of these tools became stopped being just like an interesting, fun tool to like play with and became part of like your everyday workflow.
Certainly there has been. Just personally in my own use, I think I was using ChatGPT 3.5 for about 6 or 7 months before my partner Samantha and I started checking in and just be like, "Hey, want to let you know I'm using this thing?" And she's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I probably should let you know I've been using it too, and we think we can use it for client work." So there was definitely that inflection point. That
Mm-hmm.
happened 2.5 years ago at this point. And it was like February 2024 when we were like, if we're using it, we need to guide our team on this. And we put everybody on the team on it, team's
Right.
platform at that point. It took about a year before our team really started actually using it.
Okay.
And so that was, within our firm's products, processes and
Mm-hmm.
adoption across the firm. We gave the tool to them and we said, if you're going to use it, use this tool because it's got, team security, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it took about a year to 14 months later for us to actually do any kind of formal training uh, to our team so they could see, this isn't just about generating, images for LinkedIn and stuff,
Yeah.
but how to actually use it on research and how to verify it and everything like that. So I'd say that's when it really took off. And that was partially my operations specialist
Mm.
took Byron and Twyla's class like
Okay.
3 months before that, and it unlocked it for him.
Mm.
Um, and then he was able to introduce that and really train the team on something they'd had for over a year, but nobody was really making any progress on it.
Yeah. Did you find they were excited by it? Is it like, or is there like hesitation? Even still, I guess. I think different personalities are interacting it with it in different way. But overall, how do you see your team embracing it? Or
I think a little bit of both,
Mhm.
obviously. I've got some team members who've taken it and run with it, jokingly name your your bot, name your agent kind of thing
Yeah.
like that. And I was talking to, Nova the other day, different things like that. Um, and then others that are hesitant and others that needed to verify. But, my partner Sam took a aggressive approach on it after we did
Mhm.
the training where every time they'd ask her a question, she'd ask them like, what did ChatGPT say? And that kinda, said,
From
"Don't
them.
don't come to us with a question if you haven't already checked with the AI. You should be coming to us with what this is what, ChatGPT or Blue Jay or anything like that said. It can you verify? Can you
Right.
sign off on this?" Is
Interesting.
how that we had to be aggressive from the top on that to get
Yeah.
more adoption across the firm.
Absolutely. Nova is my dog's name, so I talk to Nova all the time. So when you said that, I was like, I'm glad
That
she wasn't in the room because she probably would have started barking or something.
Yeah, that's mine's,
No,
my
no.
mine's names.
Okay. That's so funny. One of the things is that, Blue Jay obviously is a tax research AI tool. But this report, right, talks about how the firms aren't just using these tools or aren't just using AI to answer questions, right? They're embedding it across the whole planning, advisory, review, client communications, staff development, right? Like so many different areas of the business and the client life cycle. So, Ankit, talk about this like idea of thinking in systems rather than individual tasks. Because I think sometimes we think of, a problem that we have and we go, oh, let me look at this individual thing in whatever AI tool that I have. But we don't think of it kind of holistically. So, talk a little bit more about how the report differentiates that systems thinking.
No, it's a great question. And I'm going to use two terms here. Referring to a point solution. So the idea is I have this one task that I want to do manually. AI does it for me. Perfect. I can swap out human for AI and the workflow remains the same. But what we're seeing is a move to a more of a system solution where we know that the AI can, look up an authority, it can pull it, it can summarize it, it can draft a memo from end to end. So at that point, why would a person need to run five manual steps
Mm,
instead of having a system solution in place? So the idea is redesigning the workflow around what the technology can do instead of maybe tacking AI onto a workflow that you already had that exists. And we're
right.
seeing that report, like you mentioned, backs that up across the spread of like use cases that we see in the Outlook report on reasons why firms are adopting AI. The spread or the delta across the each data point is about 16 or so percent from top to bottom. So it's not just showing up in one area or one corner of the practice. It's
Mhm.
showing everywhere all at once. And that's when you see kind of the benefits start to compound.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Barrett, walk us through what that looks like in like practice, right? Like, and how do you integrate kind of the systems thinking and AI into a typical client engagement today?
Yeah. I think the way I would break that down is like stage one is going to Blue Jay for research and saying, okay, this is how I implement this complex tax reporting situation. Stage two or systems thinking on it would be don't just go to it for the research and then go manually try and figure out, how to back that up with a work paper in Excel, how to back that up in the tax return and make sure it comes through on your print preview of your tax return. Systems thinking, I think, would be every stage along that journey. Now, can't necessarily use BlueJ for this yet, but taking the research from BlueJ, putting it into Claude, putting it in ChatGPT and saying, okay, produce a work paper
Mhm.
with all the calculations that I can manually adjust, taking that, getting to the point where it's populating the tax form, the tax return, the tax forms, and then even print previewing that and saying, sending it back to BlueJ and saying, is this being properly reported
Mm,
on the relevant forms? I think that's like Ankit talked about, starting from you got to re-envision the entire thing. It's not just,
right.
well, now I use it for my tax research and it replaces the tax research binders that we used to have back in the day.
Yeah.
It's really, no, it could take from end to end the entire process and make every single piece of that faster. And teaching your team to trust it for that also is
Mm,
each of those stages are going to take some training and some experimentation because it might do the research and the tax forms perfectly right now, but it might take another tax season or a different tool entirely to handle the creation of, the work papers or the templates. Um,
yeah.
and approaching each one separately and saying which tool is the best tool for this part of the system. Uh,
That brings up an interesting question because I think this is one of the places where some people that maybe have started to implement but don't have that systems thinking yet get stuck, right? We we think something goes in and we go, okay, here's the result, and it's not perfect for whatever reason. And then we go, up, get rid of that. That doesn't work, and we just give up. Tell us how because I know you've been on this AI journey for years, even looking at, AI and audit practices and looking at, risk. How have you embraced kind of the work in progress nature of some of these tools, and had your team kind of embrace that mindset too.
Yeah. Again, across the team, it's going to be different. So I know which one of my team members can experiment with,
Right,
switching back and forth between Claude and and ChatGPT for different tasks. Which ones just need to be given a tool
right.
and be encouraged to use that tool and not worry about the fear of missing out with the other
Yeah.
tools.
Yes.
But um, one of the most helpful pieces I picked up from a YouTube channel on AI that I follow said, "Re- create your wish list. Like
Mm,
I want in the future, I want AI to do and write everything that you want AI to ever do for you. Like, no matter how far-fetched it is, even like driving flying cars or whatever like that. Like,
yeah.
this is what I want AI to do, to actually like client documents to delivery to like, handling IRS notices with the
Mm,
comptroller's office or the IRS, whatever the case might be. Create that wish list and revisit that wish list on a regular basis. Each time there's a new model that comes out, each time you're testing a new tool, just run down your wish list and pick, a handful of projects off of there and see if it's there yet. And if it's not, keep it on the wish list. If it is, cross it off, figure out a process to implement that across your company. But I think so many of us have an idea and it's like, oh, it'd be really cool if it could do this. And we go and we try it and it doesn't work the first time. And we're
yeah.
like, oh, this is terrible. AI is never going to replace me. It's not even worth using.
And then you just ignore it,
But that
right?
was on 3.5 and now we're up to like 5.2 or we're up
Right.
to, we're up to completely different models in Claude. So you have to revisit that and that keeps it fresh. It doesn't keep it at the forefront of your brain, but it keeps you for forgetting it. Like a year and a half ago, I had this really amazing idea and I can't remember what it was. And so I've never revisited it to see if it could do that yet.
Right. Yeah, the revisiting and not, like I think we have more tolerance for other things and this is still in process. It's changing really fast actually. So that feeds our instant gratification kind of nature. But it's something I love that idea of that wish list and think big and then kind of check back in on it. That's really smart advice. So we talk a lot about efficiencies, obviously, with AI. But the report, Ankit, suggests there's a bigger story here. It's not just the time that we're saving, but it's what we're able to do with that time. And so I think one of the strongest messages is that AI is not replacing professional judgment, for example, but it's actually making it really more valuable. So, Ankit, how do you see this really elevating some of these tools, creating the space to elevate the role of the CPA, elevate the role of the tax professional?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, personally, for me, it was the finding that I cared about the most in the entire report. And although I haven't used a traditional tax research tool or the binders and manual sifting like you mentioned earlier, Barrett, but we know that those were hard to use, right? Whether you're doing Boolean searches or you're going through pages, you're essentially stitching answers together by hand. And um, at that time, knowing how to find the right answer itself was valuable and
Mm,
almost like a skill that was gate kept. What AI is doing, it's collapsing that. Anyone can surface the relevant code or ruling within seconds now. So what used to differentiate a great practitioner isn't that scarce. The
mm,
scarcity is kind of knowing what that answer means for the specific client in the specific situation and with the specific facts that you have on hand. And that's that judgment piece that we feel like, takes years to build and can't be automated.
right.
The data and going back to the report, backing up that up directly, I think we see 77% of responders who are regularly using AI for research say that it's giving them more time to lean into that judgment.
Mm,
And then instead of course, devaluing that expertise, it's stripping away the mechanical parts of the job that was never really the point, right? The point
right.
was to put the judgment in the professional's hands and let them provide the advisory work front and center.
Yeah. That's awesome, and that it's actually elevating and creating that differentiation of, this expertise, that people spend years building, we go to school for, pass it's pretty hard tests, right? And that this is not replacing that, I think is a terrific message and one that we're probably not elevating enough. Barrett, I'm curious for you, just because we've talked about some of efficiencies and where now we have this, you know, time
Mhm.
maybe available if it's there, because we talk about how it's not perfect and we're training. There's, some um, time that we need to learn these tools, and train. But where have you used some of this save time that you have? What are you
Mhm.
doing this year that, for example, 2 years ago you couldn't have imagined being able to do just from a time standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be dependent on the practitioner. And this is the warning that I would send
Right.
out there for all of us is yes, it can cut down on the amount of time that you do. And the tendency is going to be like, cool, I can now do 1/10, it takes 1/10 the amount of time. So I can do 10 times as much work as I
Mhm.
could before and just turn it
Mhm.
into even more of a tax mill, even more of a
Mhm.
volume game. That's going to be the temptation, especially in a, profit at all costs kind of model. You have to
Right.
rethink your firm. And I love that the report touched on that, different approaches to value and pricing and different things like that.
Right.
But that's not a guarantee. Our profession could become obsolete if we just head into the volume direction because you
Mm-mm.
think of like all the tax advice that you see on YouTube and TikTok, that is people who have no professional judgment or training surfacing these schemes because they now have access. It's not gate kept anymore.
Right.
And they're coming out with all these secrets that the tax pros don't want you to know, as if it's like this revolutionary new concept. And those of us with judgment, those of us with experience are like, I'm not touching that stance with a 10-foot pole. You
Yeah.
want to, you go ahead. But I think where it's saving time, or I guess where it's making me focus my time, this is
Mhm.
what I didn't have as much before. I've got new client contacts that are coming to the meetings with all the research done
Yeah.
already. And they're asking me about things like RSUs and AMT and all of this kind of stuff. They're coming to me and they just want me to rubber stamp the research that they have already done.
Interesting.
And that's a challenge for our profession because that means I need to charge $8,000 for that phone call to confirm what they've already,
Right.
done. It also means I'm not going to be able to take all their information and their work papers and go and, disappear behind my desk for 2 weeks and come up with a recommendation. I've got to develop that judgment. I've got to develop that understanding. I've probably got to niche my services down so that I'm only dealing with those kind of calls
Mhm.
to be able to charge that high of value and think on my feet in front of the client. But that's kind of different. And we've been warned about this for, 2 decades. It's the whole idea of when you go buy a car, you're not going onto the lot looking to see what the options are out there.
Right.
You're going onto the lot because you know exactly what model you want. And this lot has that model. Just tell me
Right.
where to sign. And that's something is going to challenge our profession. But if we're just going to go for the volume game and try and get do 10 times as more returns, there's going to be people doing it cheaper, faster, and with better marketing than we're going to be
Right.
able to keep up with. So it's
Right.
up to us to bring the trusted advisor, the judgment, and to price that appropriately.
Mhm. Differentiation in the market, right? When there's other things like that. Interesting. Yeah. Mm, that never thought I would hear the comparison of, a tax advice and a car, buying a car, but I totally see that, right? And I think of, doctors, the medical profession. If certainly, with WebMD, I'm guilty of it. I'll go research. I think I have this. I just need this,
Yeah.
short time as possible, and you can see the doctor just roll their eyes. They're like, like so.
And we need to be able to explain why without
Right.
discounting the research, without discounting the tool,
Right.
because I'm going to turn to Blue Jay as well. I'm going to turn to ChatGPT for backup as well. But to not just say, oh, you can't trust anything you see in AI. This is why my old school approach is better on this. We need to be able to have that conversation and not get challenged, not get threatened, and to know where our value is and say, yes, I'm going to look over your research and say yes or no, this makes sense. I might apply one or two things you didn't think about,
Right.
but you're going to pay me for that phone call. You're not going to pay me for the implementation of it. You're not going to pay me for the research of it like you would have in the past.
Interesting. Yeah. So Barrett touched on it a little bit about the future of the practice, and you said, billing and how we think about how we value what we do for members, or for not for members, for clients. Ankit, as AI becomes, standard, so when that 60% jumps up to, 99, what should firm leaders be really thinking about simply beyond just like purchasing a new technology or adding on some sort of, automated part to their practice? Like in terms of the business model, where do you see firms leaders really need to focus as kind of the environment shifts?
Certainly. I mean, there's 3 things, and I think Barrett touched upon them as well in some of his answers, but, um, in the report, I think the first kind of major thing is governance.
Mm,
We know that the real question isn't, should we be using AI? It's how do we govern the people in our firm that are already using AI as it is? And there's a gap in the data that kind of outlines that. We see that firm level adoption for AI sits at around 60%, but 80% of individual respondents say that they're already using AI on a weekly or monthly basis for research. And that gap is essentially unsanctioned usage. It's not a
right.
design problem. It's leading to a preference signal. And I think the firms that are able to adopt into these tools, build the workflows for them, build the training and development for them behind the scenes for newer junior staff are the ones that are really going to excel. And so obviously not a choice between AI or no AI. It's you're deciding whether you want to have a sanctioned tool or an unsanctioned tool. The second thing I think is training. Once again, Bear, we touched upon that, but it's deliberately building that technical, cognitive, and people skills, and not just
Mm,
handing somebody a tool. And I think once again, Barrett, you touched on this as well, but it's in the report. The third is around pricing, and it's typically the most uncomfortable conversation that I know tax professionals will have. We're already seeing close to 70% of AI adopting firms moving away from hourly billing. Obviously, like you mentioned, if AI cuts that research time in half or in a fourth, we're not going to be billing for that time. That's going to cut our revenue down quite a bit. So not only are they decoupling from that kind of price to time value, but we're seeing hybrid models, subscription models appear as well, in addition to technology costs in some cases being passed over to the client.
mm. Okay. Very interesting. Good things to be thinking about. Barrett, for you, as you think about your firm and you think about the profession that you serve as Secretary Treasurer of MACPA, what advice would you give to other firm leaders that know that they need to embrace this? Like it's not going away, but maybe that 40% they're just not sure where to begin.
Hmm. I mean, the IRS basically just put a countdown timer on the hourly billing model.
Yeah.
In my estimation, they released Circular 230 guidance at the end of June that basically said if you are saving time with AI, you have to pass that time savings to your client if you're billing by the hour,
Mm,
because that's what we've built our profession around is it
right.
took me this long to research it. So you have got to get away from that and towards a different justification for the value that you're providing to your clients, because they're going to start making determinations on what unconscionable fees look like pretty quickly. That might be a technology or a platform fee. AI research, AI software certainly isn't cheap, and that could be passed off to clients. But I think that that's just even delaying that tough conversation even
Right.
longer. And, you know, again, I don't think our potential clients don't want to pay for our advice. They've just not seen the relationship like I talked about. I've got people that are like, I've spent, a week researching this, 2 weeks looking this up. I've tried every single test and I just need a professional. And this is what AI can't do. And this is where we
Right.
need to maybe our value is just I'm signing up a tax return and I'm backing it up in an audit.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know that that's the right place to stake it. Again, that's a volume play
Right.
because there will be somebody else that'll say, well, I'll sign that tax return and back it up in an
Cheaper.
audit for cheaper.
Right.
um, but we need to figure out who our target client is and the value that we're providing for them apart from billable time. And I understand a lot of firms want to move that way. It's the how do I measure my team's productivity when I'm paying them based on time? That's a whole different discussion. But
Right.
you've got to figure that out because doubling the rate of adoption on AI is so much faster than we saw with, online accounting general ledgers, than we saw
Yes.
with bill payment tools, than we saw with, electronic tax software, anything else we've seen in my 20 years in this profession. This has been so much faster, and billable time is not going to hold up to that change.
Yeah. I mean, we've been having this billable hour conversation for decades. I feel like probably 20 years. Like, I'm
Ron
trying to think.
Baker wrote
Ron
about it
Baker.
first
Yeah.
in the early 90s. So,
Yeah. So more than that. Like,
yeah.
it is definitely and we've held on to it.
Mm.
But
And I joke, I'm like,
yeah.
well, so now we need to have $4,000 per hour billable time.
Yeah.
And there might be firms that are able to get away with that for a bit, but then you're going to have a firm that comes out, well, we have a $3,000 per hour billable time. And then, it'll regress towards the mean eventually again. So
Right. It's a
knock on
race
wood.
towards the bottom versus, and it doesn't feel great too. Don't you value yourself, value the expertise, value the years of experience, the education there. But it is hard. It's a shift. It's like moving a giant ship that's always been going in this direction. And how do you stop it and move, right? MACPA, we're going through some big shifts internally, and it's a challenge. Sometimes, you just want to, like, let's close down the practice, let's close down the world for like 2 weeks, and they'll open back
Catch
up as
up?
a brand new organization. Like, perfect. It's just not how life works, unfortunately, right?
No, it is not.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have to end on good news because we know it's hard, but we have to end on good news if we started with good news. So, accounting profession, right? We've always been built on trust. We've always been built on judgment, on relationships, on creating that value and having that trusted advisor relationship. Where's the good news in this? What gives each of you, with some of these rapidly changing and exciting, but also scary, technology, what gives you the most confidence in the future of our profession? Ankit, I'll start with you. What gives you confidence in the future?
Yeah, I think like the ultimate thesis of the report is that I mean, and you expect in a report about AI efficiency, you'd expect it to be a lot about like speed or cost savings, and there's obviously mention of that, but the major kind of trends are all around people.
Mm,
And I feel like the firms that kind of that are going to pull ahead are going to use this moment to become more human. So whether that's better client relationships, doing more better advisory work, or offering better work-life balance for their own team and their own firms, instead of like kind of that, doing more with the same headcount, like that volume kind of game that we were talking about. Looking at like, and I know we're talking about the billable hour, but if we look at it, 5 or 7 years out, I definitely feel like the billable hour will be much less dominant in this kind of space. Judgment and advisory will kind of be the primary value prop that firms are selling on. And then firms are also training deliberately their staff on those kind of judgment and people skills rather than assuming that those skills will kind of come up over time.
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. Barrett,
I
end
mean,
us out. Some good news. What's our bottom line? What's giving you confidence?
he stole mine, but that's what I started the podcast with. The
Yeah,
good news is that I still have a team member who's pushing into this profession and committing herself to this profession. I've had
absolutely.
conversations in the past month with people who've career moved into accounting, and you wouldn't do that if you thought it was hopeless. So
Yeah,
I want to return to our role as trusted advisor. I think we get lost in that sometimes with the volume and the deadlines and everything that is
right.
putting pricing pressure on us. But that's the good news for me. And I read Jeff Colvin had a book, came out about 12 years ago, called Humans Are Underrated. And
Mm,
it was basically the thesis in a world of AI, instead of asking and betting your future on what AI can't do, ask and bet it on what people will still want humans to do in a world where AI can do everything.
mm,
And that, I think, is I'm still a business owner, and I want to talk to a human before I make a determination on,
right.
should I lay off 3 of my team members, because that's what ChatGPT, that's what the AI told me is the logical, cost-efficient move. But I still have some emotions I need to work through. I still have some
Hmm.
ways I need to feel good at night about that decision, or alternatives that are not just a cost-effective alternative that I'm going to talk through with a trusted advisor. And that's the hope I have for the profession.
Yeah. People's money is a very personal thing. whether it's a business owner, whether it's your own, like it's super personal. And I think just like I personally would never want an AI doctor. Like if my doctor uses AI and gets to a better, but that bedside manner
Yeah.
that we can have as trusted professionals, I think is definitely the good news. And I love that it's going to make our work and our profession more human and not less, because I think there's a lot of opportunity. And we're seeing that in those people coming into the profession. A couple years ago, I think that was the hardest discussion I was having is, I look at the rates of people studying accounting and wanting to be CPAs, and we're still fighting that in some ways, but there seems to be a shift, and I think that's really great news. So thank you so much, Barrett and Kit, for joining us and talking about this. It's important stuff for our profession. It's exciting and it's scary, but we're doing it together as a community here at MACPA, and so we're grateful for both of you. And I look forward to speaking with you all some more. I feel like we could have this conversation every month and something new would be there. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rebekah.
Thank you so much.